to the Sports Show. Mike Max, Patrick Royce, Lou Nanny, and Sid Hartman. A lot to talk about tonight, Sidney.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Hey, you know, I was watching those Hall of Fame speeches last night, and this Football Hall of Fame induction has become the darndest thing over the years because, like no other Hall of Fame, everybody anticipates, analyzes, and wants to hear the speeches. You were involved in one, but what did you think of Chris Carter last night?
Well, I've told this story before. Tom Landry introduced some guy the same year I introduced Grant. And we're sitting there, and every guy's crying after he gets through. So I said to Tom, and we were pretty close friends, he had a close relative up here, come up here, call me, we'd have coffee or something like that in the off season. Then he had a guy named Grace Kelly from Edina who was his secretary. So I says, Tom, next time you come up, we want to have coffee. I'll buy you the price of a double steak at Murray's. If he cries, you buy me coffee. You got the bet.
Bud Grant.
He goes up there,
Bud Grant,
just like the rest of them.
Yeah.
He made it 12 seconds. Bud.
Yeah. Well, what about Chris Carter, though? My question was, what did you think of Chris Carter's speech?
Well, Carter did the same thing.
He lost 2 steaks at Murray's?
Pretty emotional guy.
I would have to say, as I thought about this last night, watching him, Patrick, maybe one of the most complicated people I've ever covered.
Yeah, I got along with him, but I didn't have to cover him on a daily basis. The people, the beat guys, he could blow them off, man. He could be tough a lot of days. But I didn't have any problems with him. But I didn't, as I said, I didn't try to talk to him every day either.
No, and it was mixed with his teammates. Some liked him.
It's amazing to me, though, of the great athletes in this town who've come and gone, there's probably less fanfare from the fans about this guy than any.
I was thinking the exact same thing last night.
He didn't have the big connection with the fans.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
It's not that they despise him. It's just that he didn't really connect or become a Puckett-like or something like that.
Well, he didn't spend any time outside like all the other guys. He never really mingled with the people on a daily basis. Like Puckett would go to a lot of different events. All the big stars that you know of that have been here have done a lot of that. He hasn't. But he did. I was happy that he did recognize Wheelock Whitney and Betty. I think it was Trilogy.
Wheelock went down there.
Well, Wheelock really was the difference in him being a Hall of Famer or a nobody.
Here's the thing.
And Trilogy.
I'll tell you what, Jerry Burns didn't hurt either.
That's what I was just saying right
That was the one thing I thought he mentioned Jerry Burns, and he didn't.
He didn't mention Jerry.
No.
And Jerry Burns is here. Not Wheelock Whitney. After he
in
came
terms
here.
of acquiring him,
Yeah.
about.
Oh, you want to let me finish?
I'm sorry. The last time I asked you about Chris Carter's speech, you talked about Tom Landry's secretary. So go ahead.
Well, Jerry Burns is the reason he was here. They weren't going to bring him in. They were going to let the Giants have him. And Jerry Burns said, we need him. Give him. And he and Burns had a good relationship. Although they had some pretty good receivers that year. Jake Reed, Randy Moss, and him.
Later on, but he was here 7 years before Randy.
Yeah, and he played with a lot of different quarterbacks. It wasn't just one connection.
Yeah, that's the thing. If he would have had, if he would have had more Warren Moon for 6 years when he was in his prime time instead of Jim McMahon, and he didn't have great quarterbacks. He played
with Moss, didn't he?
Yeah, but later. He was
later.
a wily veteran by the time they drafted Moss.
I will say this, Louis, there's no more individual selfish position than wide receiver in football.
Well, I don't know about that, but I'll tell you one thing. When you talk about Carter, all you remember is him getting his feet down right inside the sidelines better than anybody I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And he was so good at it. And I think that's why, it's one of the reasons why Moss got so good so fast is because he had Carter to teach him a lot of stuff.
He could get himself between the defender and the ball very well. But let me, I have a theory on receivers. They're the only guys on the football field who rely totally on somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
So they got to lobby with that guy
all the time.
They got to, and then, but that not only makes them reliant, it also gives them an excuse. Their failures aren't their fault because it's the quarterback.
But the other part is, if you watch a wide receiver and he breaks right here and he says, I was wide open. And he was for a half a second, but that means the quarterback who's looking at 18 different things was supposed to see him right there.
He had a pretty good football team when he was there.
Yeah, he didn't.
I mean, he had plenty of good receivers with him, plenty of good people. And
But he had a lot of different quarterbacks. He had Rich Gannon, Sean Salisbury, Warren Moon, Brad Johnson, Jim McMahon, Dante Culpepper, Randall Cunningham. That's a lot of different quarterbacks.
Yeah, but they did pretty good with him.
Yeah, for sure.
He was terrific. It's amazing it took so long for him to get in the Hall of Fame. But
Parcells reminds me of Knight when he speaks.
Whose speech?
When Bill Parcells speaks, he reminds me of a Bobby Knight speech. He's articulate, he's smart.
Parcells and Grant and Knight are very close friends, you know. They were at West Point together. And I think that's why Parcells didn't take a job. He wanted to get in the Hall of Fame.
Huh. It is amazing what that means to these guys,
Well,
man.
he was going to get in if he took another job or not.
But he wanted to be alive.
When you get that age, you get a little tired too.
Yeah.
And he said that. If you look at the story they had in the paper the day before, he just said he wanted to coach the 18 games, but in the 16 games, but he didn't want everything else that went with it.
Yeah.
And that's what happens. You know, you get old, you get tired.
They tried to get him here, and there's no way was he going to coach. They tried to
2 or
get him
3
here at
times
one
they
point.
tried to get him here. Take a break, come
cost
back.
$6 million, too.
Locally owned, nationally known, and a great place to go when you're in downtown Minneapolis anytime. Maybe going over to a Twins game, a Lynx game, or something. J.D. Hoyt's, a favorite of all of ours. Welcome.
Found out something with those Twins this weekend, by the way. You know what the best attraction of all in the summer at Target Field?
The Houston Astros.
Weather. Weather.
Oh, gosh.
Gorgeous
This was
weekends in
San Diego.
August. They don't care who you're going to
Well,
watch.
I'll tell you what, though, man. If you want perspective, if you want to feel good about the Twins, just watch the Houston Astros, man, because they have completely given up on that team.
Well, they had 6 games at home, 5 over 30,000, 1 sold out. I had a thing in my column, but I didn't get it in. That Target Center might be
Field.
might be the next Wrigley Field. That the stadium has got something to do with people going to baseball game.
Of course it does. In August.
Yeah, I think once September hits, it's over.
Yeah, because you said nobody was going to go to Twin City to the TCF football stadium just to go to a stadium.
Yeah.
So
Remember?
it's got to be the weather.
Yeah.
They'll be, listen, you go back in Twins history, you go back to Met Stadium, August was always the best month because that's when they're just sitting there waiting for the corn to grow.
The Legion tournaments are over, and
that's when all the rural folks make the trip from St. James. You know, that's when they drive in.
And farther than that, we used to do a survey at the North Stars to find out where our fans were coming from. And they used to do it at the Twins and the Vikings, and boy, the Twins used to have them from all the states in the summer.
Yeah.
They had so many people coming.
But that
from
time,
other
would you go
states.
Shakopee Richfield?
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
Oh, yeah.
Rochester.
A lot of people plan their vacation in
Yeah.
August. School's starting. The kids are going to be away to college or something like that. But that Target Field, I think, is going to keep on drawing some people.
Let's cut to the chase here. The Twins swept Houston, which is good news, but it's kind of a hollow victory because of where Houston's at in the standings, where the Twins are at, plus they just got swept by Kansas City. Louis, they got a mess right now trying to figure this out, and you can just feel this thing festering when people start talking about, will Paul Maurer be the next manager? What's going to happen there? Who's going to stay on the staff? All these things. How would you run that if you were Terry Ryan?
Well, I think you have to realize that the manager's not going to make a big difference unless you got players. You got to have players. And they have some youngsters coming up that they're hoping are going to accelerate and get there faster. And they're going to have to go into free agency if they want to improve quickly to fill some holes. Now, it all depends what they have to spend if they're going to do it or not. But you'd like to see some of those kids really accelerate and get here faster, like Buxton and Sano. But you still got a number of other positions you got to go into the free agent market for.
I think a Suter and Parise can do more for a hockey team, though, than 2 guys can do for baseball.
Yeah, first of all, you got 2 for basically 5 rather than 2 for 9.
Yes.
You got 5 positions in hockey. You don't count the goalies, so you got...
So 40% of your, depending on how you look at it.
You got 9 positions, and then you got 10
and they're on the ice 26 to 30 minutes a game, so it's almost half a game. So they really affect the lineup more, just like if you went to basketball, a guy there affects it even more than hockey players, you know. So if you got a top player in basketball, so
But I guess what I'm saying is just signing two guys.
No, I'm not
can't
saying
get
two.
you
I'm
out
saying
of
you
the
got
mess.
to go to the free agent market and
To some
spend
extent.
some money. You got to get some other
Are you
players.
texting, Sid, man? Every time the camera's on, you're down here doing this. One of those machines.
Just continue your
Okay. Would you?
Your BS.
Let me ask you this: if you're the general manager and Ron Gardner knows his job, and everybody's talking about it down the line, how much communication do you have with him if you haven't made a decision yet?
Well, I would.
What do you tell him? Do you say, Ron, I'm not talking to you about it until? What do you say?
Well, that's exactly right. If they're so close, though, I can't believe that they're not talking about situations after the season. I have to think that I know in my relationship that I had with Sonmor, I had Sonmor for such a long time. Glenn always knew essentially where I stood, and I knew where he stood. And I would think that these guys have talked a lot more than people are aware of.
I was going to say it depends upon whether it's Glenn Sonmor or Bill Mahoney.
Mahoney didn't last as long as Sonmor.
Sid, how do you feel about it all?
Well, I'm starting to think they'll bring him back. I mean, I didn't think they would, but I think that Terry Ryan really thinks that some of those guys are going to develop and be pretty good baseball players.
If he comes back, it's because Terry Ryan doesn't want to blame anybody but himself.
I agree with you 100%.
That's
It's his admission.
Yes, that's his. He says if I fire Gardy, then it looks like I'm blaming him, and it's actually my fault. So.
Well, I got to tell you though, some of those when you all of a sudden you get into an and you look and it's Jamie Carroll followed by Clete Thomas, followed by fill in the blank Herman. You go.
If Chris Calabello played for the Meadville Mudhens, they'd try to change the way he hits.
Yeah.
But I have
He's
to,
here hitting in the big leagues.
Yeah, but stop and think about it. You can't just make a baseball team that good that quick.
No.
Look at Kansas City Royals, how long they've been
That's
winning.
why I think you might be on the verge. If you're not careful, you can be the Kansas City Royals just as easily as one of the Twins.
Because I think they got some good youngsters coming along.
Well, they said about Kansas City forever, though.
I really like Terry Ryan. I think
I
Terry
do,
Ryan's
too.
a very smart baseball guy, and he's got the ability to fix it. But you got to spend some money to fix it, too.
But the trouble is with having, you can have, the five, you could have Gretzky and his four teammates, and if you got a goalie that's letting in 9 a game, that's like this team. If they don't get some pitching, it's not going to make
Kyle
any difference.
Gibson's not who they think he could be. Like he doesn't look like he is so far. Who knows? Take a
Where are
break.
they going to
Come
get
back,
the
stay with
pitching?
us. There it is, out in Minneapolis, General Mills Boulevard, 394. Stop on by, see Bruce, see Charlie, see the whole gang. It is such a comfortable ride any time of the year, especially in these late summer months. You turn the vent on, all is right with the world when you stop by and get an Audi. Welcome back to the sports show. The Vikings, we were at training camp last week. What did you come away with?
Boring. It always is. There's nothing you learn.
It is boring.
Nothing
the
you
game on the
learn
field.
watching Viking
The
football
interviews is where you
practice.
get your information, but
But they got some breaks. First of all, this linebacker from Penn State is the real stuff.
but he's not a difference maker right now.
Hodges, you mean?
He's healthy. He can play.
Manti is the one he likes.
I talked to John
Butler.
Butler about him. He said he's the best he's ever seen.
Really?
Yeah. And
Lawrence Taylor, eat your heart out.
the kid made All-American. They got some sleepers. They got a wide receiver from Florida State. Didn't expect to be there. We'll see. I think they're going to miss those 4 guys they had last year. That's what I keep on thinking.
So I can't tell. But if they have that great linebacker, why would they miss the Jasper Brinkley?
They wouldn't miss Brinkley, but there's 3 other guys they'll miss.
Cluey, you think they're going to miss? You watched that lock punt the other day when we were there?
I think they'll miss the guy holding the ball on field goals and points after
You've always been
touchdown.
big on that, yeah.
And Harvin, they got to miss him.
What do you
Yeah,
think
but they didn't miss him the
You
last
think the
5
new
games.
holder's going to be like Lucy and go like this, or what? The hell, I can do that, for God's sake.
Whoop! It's been the most uneventful training camp I can remember, though.
Yeah,
Pat.
we needed a rest. Come on. We had one guy. We had one guy suspended for 4 games, but I didn't know we had him.
Yeah, DeMarcus Love. Yeah, you go, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, he's gone, but who the hell was he? I don't know.
Bishop,
We'll
you haven't
see.
seen anything
We'll
from
see.
him yet.
Yeah, he's hurt.
Bishop's hurt again, so.
Yeah, he might not be a
We'll see how their draft is. They think they got another great draft. I don't think there's any way they'll have a draft like they had last year. everything just worked out perfect. They were able to fill all the holes. The media is on Ponder. All I know is Ponder was responsible. They were 10-6 last year with no wide receivers that worth the darn outside of Harvard. And
I kind of think it was more Peterson.
Apparently he looked pretty good.
Yeah, Peterson had a little
Saturday
something to do with that. Yeah. Yeah, it's funny, Louis, because in the day and age where the running back is de-emphasized, when you got the best in the league, he's your marquee guy.
And it's amazing he could do that when everybody knew he was still going to get the ball and be running.
And his line was okay, but it wasn't the best in the NFL.
No. I think that they're going to be a little bit better this year. Now, whether they win 10 games or not, that I can't tell you.
You could be better and not win 10, is what they say.
I think they could be a better team and not win 10 games.
I just wonder if some of these smart coaches in this league won't find some ways to prevent Adrian Peterson from having the same kind of year he had last year.
Well, if he does, he'd be the first ever. If you look at the stats for the 2,000-yard guys, the most anybody ever had the next year was 1,400. So.
But, 1,500 for Peterson is still going to be
100 yards a game.
That's right. That's
100
awful
games
good.
Plenty.
Yeah.
Well, if that means you're throwing the ball well, because, and that's
you got better
That's
receivers.
what you're saying. Do you think that Ponder's affected by his matrimony and still being a newlywed or not?
Because you were affected by your
I was, man. I couldn't write scripts. I couldn't
years.
Concentrate.
Took him 6 months. Took you 10 years.
6 months, about 2 months.
Yeah.
I would like to see a more confident human being.
He
strikes me as he's a little reticent.
But they got the best backup they've had around here in 5 years.
Yes.
Castle.
He's a great kid, and I think he'll do all right.
How about Castle? Do you like Castle?
Castle had a couple good years. Yeah, I think they're in much better shape there.
He's an outgoing
They had
guy.
nobody last year to move in there if he got hurt.
Jarius Wright, Jerome Simpson. Remember those two names.
Is that right?
Yep.
Well, Jerome Simpson is looking very, very good in the preseason.
Jarius Wright, Jerome Simpson.
Yeah.
I watched him the whole offseason.
Yeah.
This is a different Jerome Simpson than the one that you got to know last
Well,
year.
you were a wide receiver at Hamlin, weren't you?
Well, I just threw with him.
Gaylord.
Take a break, come back, the sports show. Stay with us.
Uh,
There it is, Tejas Express, less than a month until the Great Minnesota Get-Together.
man,
Visit
I'm ready for
Tejas
some
Express
blocks.
and try their famously refreshing Birgarita, located on the garden, in the garden on the corner of Dan Patch and Underwood. Welcome back to the sports show.
Here's the thing. They got a much tougher schedule than they had last year.
Vikings.
They play every good quarterback in the league.
Yep.
And I'm not convinced their defense, secondary without Winfield, without even Brinkley, unless somebody comes through like this kid I was talking about, they are going to face good quarterbacks.
All right. If 3M golf tournaments become a staple here, and I don't know.
Yeah.
Patrick, I give them credit because it's hard to keep trying to reinvent the wheel. Now, this year, the greats of golf.
This year, they've been doing the greats of golf, but the twist this year was they brought in Annika Sorenstam, Nancy Lopez, and Pat Bradley, and then they had Arnie serve as their captain. He drove around with them, and he'd make a putt once in a while. And I was about 2 holes away, and Arnie made a putt on number 9, and I didn't see it, but I heard the roar. There was a roar. I hadn't heard a roar at the 3M Championship. They had 5, 6, 7, 8,000 people following them around. They had biggest crowd on Saturday I've seen out there in years.
Well, Hollis Kavner.
You played the Pro-Am, by the way, all 3 days.
3 days, yeah. And Hollis Kavner, and I talked to the pros I played with, runs the best tournaments of them all. And they want him to get more tournaments. He's been so successful, and he comes up with these ideas like that to draw people. And
But he's got to have good relationships to pull it off.
he's got great relationships, starting with Arnie.
Yeah.
That's why you can bet that Arnie flew Annika here. She lives in Orlando too, and they're such good friends. He probably said, "Arnie, I need you to take Annika in here," and he worked out the deal with the 3
I'll
women.
tell you
to
about
play.
his relationship with the players. Mark Wiebe wins the Senior British Open and has to stick around on Monday morning for a playoff. So he misses his flight. So he's now flying out of Manchester Tuesday morning, and they get 2 hours over water and have to turn around, go back. And now he's still sitting there waiting. He doesn't get out of there until Wednesday morning, and he shows up for his Pro-Am, on Thursday because how many guys would have just If it
You're
wasn't
right.
Hollis, he would have called and said, I can't make it, I'm
Yeah.
out. I just
He's a great-
cashed the biggest check of my life. I'm not
yeah.
showing up.
He's a fantastic promoter, and he takes care of those guys pretty
Yeah,
good
he
too.
does.
Don't worry about that. There's reasons why the guy came. Gave him a few bucks too.
And I've
I'll
always
guarantee you.
said, if you want to solve the Twins' attendance problems, anybody's attendance problems, you know, go for women's basketball. Get Hollis to count the house, and
You'll do well.
Yeah,
But the 3M was just,
you'll do fine.
honestly.
But they actually had a big crowd.
But like the
Saturday.
Twins, you just said that the great advocate is weather here. My
Oh, God,
gosh,
yeah.
it was perfect.
Oh, Saturday
for
was
that.
This was the best weather they've had in a while. Usually it's very hot and humid.
Yeah.
This was the best.
Closing thought?
Yes, sir.
That's it. Okay.